Hey guys, John and Jamie from True Crimecast here. If you're anything like us, you've probably had those conversations where you're like, man, someone should be recording this.
Right? And now you can do that with Zen AI, the home of vibecasting. A vibecast is all about putting the conversation first and turning it into something worth sharing.
Whether you're reacting live to a game or TV show, Zen AI makes it incredibly easy to create your own broadcast.
And you don't need a fancy setup either. Your phone is your studio. Just hit record, start talking. You can get professional level sound right from your phone.
Then Zen AI's AI producer takes over from there. It handles the cleanup, helps with editing, and even creates share-ready clips. And the cool part is you can make changes simply by chatting with it in plain English.
Zen AI is currently an invite-only beta, so join the wait list today.
Head to zen.ai to sign up.
That's zen.ai. Start vibecasting this summer.
Summer's supposed to be the easy season. So why are so many people quietly Googling a therapist between summer Fridays? Because more daylight doesn't fix the hard stuff. Sometimes it just turns the volume up. Grow does therapy differently. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Grow Therapy is here for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Hey, True Crimecast fans, Jamie and John here. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to give you a special presentation of our show, Paradigm.
Paradigm is an 8-episode series where we take a deep dive into one case. If you've been around for a while, you'll know that that is very different, as we normally will do an episode per case, but not this one.
We're currently working on season 2 of Paradigm, so we thought it'd be a great idea to bring season 1 back up. So on the True Crimecast feed over the next couple of weeks, you're going to get the entire first season of Paradigm. Now, that whole season is available over on the Paradigm feed. So you can go over there and subscribe and listen to it all now, or wait till it comes out here.
If you do go over there, we would encourage you to go ahead and hit subscribe so that when our new season comes out, you'll be immediately notified.
We're in the depth of that investigation, and it's going to be, we think, a really great story being told with hopefully some good outcomes. So make sure you subscribe over there. The guys will be back in a couple weeks for your regularly scheduled programming of True Crimecast.
Guys, we love you, and we'll see you next crime.
Arguments of composition, as they are called, rest on the premise that what is true of the parts of the whole is also true of the whole, without offering any justification. To put that in logical terms, if person A is a member of Group A, and we know that person A has attribute X, then all of Group A must have attribute X as well. The fallacy of composition points out that, while this certainly can be the case, the argument often leads to wrong conclusions because what is true of the different parts is not necessarily true of the whole. So when Natasha Cornett, member of the Pikeville Six, claims publicly to be a daughter of Satan, it should come as no surprise that the media and the public quickly drew the conclusion that the entire group must worship Satan, and that the murder of the Lillywhite family had to be a satanic ritual. Of course, District Attorney Berkeley Bell claimed, and says he still believes to this day, that this is the case. But today we're going to take a look at the 3 teenage girls involved in the murder of the Lillywhite family, their upbringing, their beliefs, and their behaviors that may or may not confirm the assertion that was made by Bell and others. Were all members of the Pikeville Six bona fide members of Satan Six? Or in this case, was the devil really in the details? This is Paradigm.
By all accounts, the individual involved in the Lily Lyd murders with the least culpability was Crystal Sturgill. She only had recently connected with the group and adamantly protested the violence, and was obviously distraught by what she had to witness. Sturgill was born on March 13th of 1979 in the town of Harold, Kentucky. She grew up not knowing who her father was, as her mother refused to tell her his identity. Her mother did get married when Sturgill was 3 years old and proceeded to have 2 other children with her new husband. Some reports indicate that Sturgill was treated differently from the other children in the home, especially by her stepfather. He was more strict on Sturgill. He had given her more responsibilities around the house, and those around the family claimed that Sturgill was neglected emotionally. And from Sturgill herself, as she told in the Devil Came Knocking podcast, it got much worse for her at home. Let's listen to this statement read by a voice actor.
When I was 3, my mother married a monster. Some of my earliest memories are of being beaten. At first, my mom tried to stop it, then he would wait until she was asleep, come in my room, and beat me. If I screamed, he said he would kill me. The beatings escalated to sexual abuse. I grew up scared, knowing I was never safe in my own home. I was 11 or so when my mother had 2 more children. They got beaten also, even though I did my best to try to protect them. I did what I was supposed to do because I was too scared not to. My mom, I guess, didn't know what to do. She told me to try to stay away from him. I did my best, but nothing stopped him from raping me, beating me over and over. When I told my boyfriend about the abuse, he choked me and blamed me. My mom told my family I was lying and made them choose between us. I was suicidal. The state took me to a foster home about an hour from everyone. Someone counted 13 different places I had stayed at while I was away from home. I ended up with a couple of girls I went to school with at the end of March. It was spring break, but I couldn't go on a senior trip because I had to change schools. Now, twice while I was there, they got an eviction notice. I sat down with my address book and called everyone I could think of. I couldn't find a place to go at all. I had been accepted to a college and planned to start summer session after graduation. I just didn't know if I'd make it that long. Finally, I called Natasha's number. I had not seen or talked to her in 3 years. That was April 3rd, 1997. Other kids were there, some I knew, some I had never met. I was afraid and I didn't know what to do, so I did what I always did. I closed my mouth and pretended I was someplace else. This is how I got through all the other horrors in my life. Being in jail is the first place in my life I felt safe. I knew no one was coming into my cell in the middle of the night to hurt me.
One of the people Sturgill knew was Dean Mullins. They had known each other for years before reconnecting via Natasha. Sturgill was an excellent student through the 8th grade, but it said that her grades really started slipping in high school, and that's when her drug and alcohol use started. Of course, that was around the time that she started legal proceedings against her stepfather and moved around to over a dozen different foster homes. As we mentioned previously, all involved in this incident, despite the different details of their stories, confirmed that Sturgill was the least culpable for any of the group's actions. Sturgill was able to get her sentence reduced upon appeal, but the reduction was not enough to allow her to have any chance of parole at any point in her natural life. In looking at Crystal's disciplinary record from prison, with nearly 30 years behind bars, she has 0 reported incidents on her record. Even looking at the best behaved of the other 6, it's pretty amazing.
Natasha Cornett was born on January 26th of 1979 in Betsy Lane, Kentucky. Her mother, Madonna Wallen, had an extramarital affair with a Pikeville police officer named Roger Burgess. But Natasha did not find out her father was not her mother's husband until she was 5 years old. Madonna eventually divorced Cornett's stepfather and did not remarry during her childhood. However, Madonna did bring several men into the house during brief relationships. Cornett became fascinated with the paranormal at a very young age. Her maternal grandmother had a near-death experience and then claimed to be able to see and interact with dead people. Her grandmother would pass away when Cornett was just 8 years old, and that same year her mother had a nervous breakdown. After that, Madonna had an ongoing battle with mental illness, which resulted in the abuse of Cornett. It's around this time that Cornett also started experiencing symptoms of depression and bulimia, losing 30 pounds in the 6th grade and having to be hospitalized due to this eating disorder. As many children do, Cornett really started trying to find herself in middle school. She also started experimenting with cutting and started dressing in dark clothing, which many at the time referred to as a goth lifestyle. Cornett became sexually active at 13 years old, and at that time really started trying to separate herself from her mother. They actually argued and even got physical, with Cornett threatening to kill Madonna with a knife when she was just 14 years old. After this incident, Madonna had Cornett arrested. For the first time, Cornett started living with her father. And despite his efforts to build a relationship, Cornett continued to struggle with her mental health and her behavior. She had to be treated at an inpatient facility for nearly 2 weeks and even attempted suicide by cutting her wrists. For her depression, Cornett was treated with Prozac and continued outpatient therapy for years. At the age of 15, she entered the Big Sandy Impact Program, which was designed to help children deal with family issues, mental health issues, and to remain in school at the same time. However, Cornett started to use and abuse illegal substances and ultimately dropped out of this program. Her use started with alcohol and ultimately led to acid, ecstasy, cocaine, and heroin. Obviously, those are heavy drugs for anyone, let alone a teenager with other ongoing struggles. Cornett would be arrested for theft and writing bad checks, and she was sentenced to probation in June of 1994. Shortly thereafter, she dropped out of school when she was just 16. On her 17th birthday, Cornett got married to a man named Steve Cornett. The wedding was a gothic theme with black clothing, and the bridesmaids were actually chained together. Of course, in retrospect, this would be used to contribute to the narrative that Cornett's entire life was about worshiping Satan. Like many teenage marriages, Cornett's didn't last. They were divorced in less than a year, and to cope with the changes, Cornett moved to New Orleans. While she was there, she ended up living on the streets and essentially begging for food and money. While there, Cornett reported being gang raped and beaten by 5 men. She would eventually leave New Orleans and move back to Kentucky. She moved back in with her mother as they had been somewhat estranged for some time since Madonna had her arrested. This time, Cornett was living with Madonna as an adult. She came and went as she pleased, and Madonna left Cornett and her friends alone, no matter how much they partied or how much they came and went at all hours of the day. Cornett and Karen Howell were very close at the time of these crimes. She had recently taken in Crystal Sturgill, she was dating Dean Mullins, and she had picked up Jason Bryant. She was truly the glue of this group. She was later said to have signs of bipolar disorder, mixed personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and dissociative disorder. However, she was deemed legally sane to stand trial for these murders. She told Dr. Robert Sadoff, who analyzed her behavior and mental health after her arrest, that she remembered past lives, could see and communicate with spirits, and regularly had out-of-body experiences. It's unclear whether these claims were legitimate or part of her legal strategy to try and appear insane. Cornett was advised on this strategy by her attorney, Eric C. Kahn. He was eventually replaced, but the damage had been done, both in the media and in court. At the sentencing hearing, Cornett denied worshiping Satan. She also claimed that she didn't have an active role in the murders of the Lillywhite family. She said that in particular, she was devastated that she could not save the children. To this day, Cornett is the face of this case. She was considered the leader of the group and publicly claimed to worship Satan. It was her quotes in the papers, it was her picture in the news, and ultimately, she played a large role in the narrative surrounding the case and the outcomes for all involved. Cornett has 5 pages worth of disciplinary records in prison, including 39 separate incidents ranging from tampering with security equipment, drug use, contraband, and her most recent charges coming in the last 2 years for defiance and selling illegal substances.
The one female that was a minor at the time of the crimes was Karen Howe. She was born on September 25th of 1979, making her just 5 months short of being 18 years old at the time of the murders. Like many of the others, Hal had a very troubled upbringing. She was born in Delaware, Ohio, but moved to Kentucky when she was just 3 years old. She claimed to feel a lot of love in her home, but her father's alcoholism ultimately drove a wedge between him and Hal's mother. They also fought over their faith, with her mother being Christian and her father refusing to convert. Some reports say that their fights sometimes got physical, but they ultimately decided to separate. They got divorced when Hal was just 9 years old. While she maintained a good relationship with her father, she continued living with her mother, but throughout the whole time, Hal also was being sexually abused without anyone knowing. This was what she had to say to the Devil Came Knocking podcast about her upbringing, as read by a voice actor.
Back then, though, in the midst of other things going on, sometimes things were also happening to me that no one knew nothing about. When I was about 6 years old, up until I was around 12 years old, when the opportunity presented itself, I was being sexually abused by 2 of my family members, trusted family members. First, it began with my older cousin and then my uncle. My uncle told me if I ever told my parents, they wouldn't believe me and they would end up very angry with me. As a child, I believed him, and so I kept it all a secret. It was a secret that tore down my self-esteem, a secret that made me leery of other people, a secret that made me hate the feel of my own skin sometimes.
Eventually, Hal would move back in with her father due to an ongoing dispute with her mother. She never stayed at either place for a very long period of time after this. She would move back and forth. She admits that she was rebellious, ultimately using illegal drugs. She ran away often and was eventually experimenting with the occult. At the time, and even now, this is something that many teenagers take a part in. She used a Ouija board. She dressed in dark, baggy clothes and claimed to even cast spells and hear voices. While she had been involved in a youth group at a church previously, these new behaviors were very concerning to her mother. In fact, her mother brought in ministers to attempt to cast out demons out of Hal. Ultimately, Hal had nowhere to turn. She did not have a strong relationship with either parent. She was using drugs, abusing alcohol, and experimenting with sex all before turning 16 years old. Her drug use included marijuana, LSD, PCP, and cocaine. She can now look back and see that most of these behaviors were in an effort to cope with the trauma and depression that she was suffering.
My mom brought me up in church. I stopped dressing like most girls in school and didn't want to wear anything too fitting. I wanted my clothes baggy. I was a mental and emotional mess, and that feels like an understatement. I would skip school, didn't do homework. I didn't care about myself. I was selfish and never thought for one moment how my actions may be affecting those that cared about me. I got stuck in an addiction, so to speak, and trapped in a dysfunctional cycle that I thought was normal. Trying to escape the reality I created for myself and run from my own pain, I began cutting on myself. I've burnt myself. I tried to commit suicide. To sum it up, I was a kid with no coping skills, and depression ultimately had its stronghold.
In high school, Hal became friends with Natasha Cornett and Joseph Reisner. Hal and Cornett were both interested in witchcraft and encouraged each other in their occult behaviors. She would also eventually start dating Reisner, and the two were together when the group left Pikeville and headed towards Tennessee. This is what Karen had to say about her relationship with Cornett and her life leading up to the murders.
Now that I am a grown woman, I look back and think, what was I thinking? By far, we were not good for each other to hang out with. It was not a healthy friendship. She was different, and I felt otherwise at that time. Up until that weekend, we ran away. I hadn't hung out with her in quite a while. I had quit school at the age of 15 years old. I did, however, worked and was studying to get my GED every day. I got a babysitting job for about 8 hours a day. I was trying my best to save up for a car. I don't really remember how Joseph Reisner and I ended up dating toward the end. I was, however, having to secretly meet him, and that only place I could see him was over at Natasha's on the weekend of April 4th, 1997. The 6 of us just so happened to be at Natasha's. We were no cult.
After her arrest, Hal was said to be low functioning with an IQ of 78 and that she had trouble navigating the complexities of relationships. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, depression with psychotic episodes, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In prison, Hal has largely been a model citizen. She had a few incidents early on with refusing orders and sexual misconduct, and a total of 8 incidents on her record, but in the last 23 years plus, she has only had 1 incident on her prison record, and that was for tobacco use.
Being guilty by association is in fact covered by the law. An individual can be charged with conspiracy to commit a crime, being an accomplice in the commission of a crime, or even just knowingly hiding that a crime took place. Some would argue that the fallacy of composition rules out the idea that members of a group should all be held accountable for the actions of one or the actions of a few. While in reality, the fallacy lies in trying to oversimplify a situation by assigning certain attributes to all members of a group to achieve a desired outcome. Everyone in the group known as the Pikeville Six is guilty of being involved in the murders of the Lillywhite family. But should the courts reflect on their sentences and alter them based on actual individual culpability? Or should the life sentences stand due to everyone taking their part in this heinous crime? That's next time on Paradigm.